and welcome back to the Conspiracy Couple podcast. I'm Marisa.
And I'm Ethan.
And today, we have another very interesting topic to share with you guys, as usual. Because all of our topics are interesting.
Always.
As always. But before we get started, if you're watching us on YouTube, hello. It's nice to see you, kind of. And if you're listening to us on streaming platforms, hello. It's nice to talk to you and not see you. How was that?
Sure.
That was kind of weird, but I started.
Nice for you to see us more.
Nice for you to see us.
Them. And nice
is
for you
it
to hear
nice
us
for you
talk.
to see us?
Yes, it is.
I did my makeup, so I guess it is.
And I didn't do anything.
I didn't do anything. Before we get started and dive into our topic, as always, we have a couple social medias you should follow us on. Instagram, Conspiracy Couple. Twitter, CC Podcast 22. And our email is not a social media, but it's a great way to get in touch with us, which is conspiracycouple22@gmail.com. Our Instagram is where we post updates on the show, any corresponding images or videos that we discuss, and pictures of the conspiracy cat, Domino. So if you like Domino, or cats,
Or us. Because you're listening to the podcast.
Then you should follow our Instagram. Also, if you haven't already, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, Conspiracy Couple Podcast. Link to that is in our bio on our Instagram. And subscribe, turn on post notifications, all of that jazz.
Even if you prefer to listen to podcasts on your whatever app you use, be it Apple, Spotify, Google, whatever, you should still subscribe on YouTube and like every video. You don't have to watch them.
Yeah.
But if you start them, that counts as a view, I think.
I don't know, but I'm going to say yeah.
And maybe you'll think, hey, it is actually kind of fun to see their faces.
Maybe.
Maybe you'll think that.
Maybe. And also the comments are a really great place for conversations regarding theories on any topics that we discuss.
Or just any thoughts about anything, such as our background or...
Unless they're mean.
Yeah, no, we don't. Not mean comments.
Not mean comments.
But if you want to talk about this panda behind us, feel free.
Feel free. His name is Benedict.
Benedict Cumberbear.
Benedict Cumberbear. So, yeah, we also really like it when you share that you're listening to us on social media. So whether that be, sharing us on your story or sharing us with your friends and sharing your theories about what we talk about, it's just always really fun to see kind of our little family expand and communicate. And I feel like our conversations open up a lot of room for further discussion.
Yeah, definitely. We love to engage.
We love it. It's super fun. And I would say 9 times out of 10, if someone shares us on their story, I'll share that on our story and just be like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Because I still am kind of surprised that people actually listen to us. But I think I should probably get over that.
Probably.
I'm over it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm over it, dog.
Just like that.
Just like that. Wouldn't you have it? So we're going to just dive right in. We're going to be talking about something that's pretty big in the world of conspiracy theories. If you have ever talked to a conspiracy theorist, you have probably heard this word. And that word is chemtrails.
Chemtrails.
Chemtrails. Mm-hmm.
Very interesting.
Ethan, as always, do you know anything about chemtrails?
Oh, do I? Yes, I do. As we know, I took a conspiracy theory class in college. And in that class, chemtrails were discussed. Mm-hmm. So essentially, chemtrails are those little lines you see following airplanes sometimes. And people believe that those contain chemicals that I believe are used for mind control or something like that. And yeah.
Yeah. So Ethan went into it. That's all I have written down. So nice talking to you. Podcast over.
Goodbye.
Bye. Just kidding. So of course, I'm going to go into more depth about what chemtrails are and what some believers think their purpose is. But first, I'm going to start with a little bit of history about when the theory started and why it started. So this theory is young, and it was born around the same time we were born, 1996. Smack in the middle.
Very young.
I was born. Chemtrails were born. You were born.
Coincidence?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh.
Apparently.
So the theory started actually when the U.S. Air Force published what I think the intention was like a goal-setting memoranda about some of their goals and technology they'd like to see in regards to weather modification.
Weather modification?
Yes. So the article was called Weather as a Force Multiplier, and it talked about futuristic hopes of being able to change the weather, and that they acknowledged it wasn't something that was possible at the time of the report, but that they were hoping that one day it would be possible. And they kind of set this goal that they would like to be able to achieve this by the year 2025.
Oh, so that's coming up.
That's coming up.
So we could like actually control the weather, and
that's the idea.
That would be kind of fun.
It freaks me out. It really freaks me out.
What doesn't freak you out?
I'll have to get back to you on that.
Fair enough.
So of course the public reads this, and we have that group of people who's like, they're controlling the weather.
Of course.
So the theory is born kind of by this government what if article, and it becomes the government is currently controlling the weather, and then that evolved into other things.
Okay.
So
that feels like a big stretch. The government's like, hey, it'd be kind of cool if maybe we could control the weather, right? And everyone's like, you're controlling the weather?
I think though, like bringing it up and talking about it, and then setting a goal of a date of when they would like to do that is kind of like, we don't have the technology right now, but we could have it soon. That's kind of what my mind is telling me.
I mean, that was a 30-year goal, though.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to be 30 in 2025.
That's what you got out of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
thought you would have already known that.
I try not to think about those things.
Well, okay, technically it's a 29-year goal, but still, that's a long...
It's a 29-year goal.
They're like, that's a ways off.
They're playing the long game.
Yeah.
They're playing the long game.
Yeah.
But...
that was a goal. It wasn't a plan.
I mean, I would say that goals are kind of consistent with plans.
Not necessarily. It doesn't like you can have your goal to have something finished by a certain date. That doesn't mean you can.
Yes, but when you have a goal, you plan according to that goal.
Right. But that doesn't mean back then they were like, we will be done with this by 2025. They're like, we hope. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's more of a hope than it is like
I think you're giving
for sure
more credit than conspiracy theorists give.
That's a shock.
Anyways.
If you've never realized that before, then you haven't been listening to this podcast.
Right. So now we're going to jump ahead to 2008. So 2008 is when the Beijing Olympics happened.
I remember.
So in this Olympic stadium, there was
this Olympic stadium?
In the Olympic stadium in Beijing.
In this one.
There was
where we're at right now.
We're
recording in the Olympic stadium, if you didn't know.
Yes. There was an instant of a successful weather manipulation that occurred.
Oh, really?
Yes.
In 2008?
In 2008.
It's a little bit earlier than 2025. Mm-hmm. Oh, but it was in China, not America?
In China.
So
America, essentially what happened was that the government was able to manipulate the weather so that it would rain in certain parts of the country.
The Chinese government.
Correct. It would rain in certain parts of the government, and not the government, the country, and thereby keep the stadium and all of the, tourism and everything around the stadium from raining.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
And it also had the goal, and I guess the result of decreasing the smog in that area.
Ah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So did they do you know where they picked it for it to rain?
I don't remember. I don't know where.
Because that'd be kind of funny if you're just like in a random town in China.
And it just starts dumping.
Or it would be even funnier if they could do this. If they I don't know. I mean, I know China isn't friends with a lot of countries, but I'm saying if you're we really want China to have beautiful weather during the Olympics. So we're going to modify the weather so that it rains in our neighboring country. We're going to make it dump on them, and we're going to keep China all nice and sunny.
I think, and we'll get into this, but it's really difficult to even modify the weather in a small contained area like that.
So it was probably just like right outside Beijing then.
Right. It also cost $30 million to do this.
And how many days? 2 weeks, basically, they did that?
Yeah. Countries will go all out for the Olympics.
I mean, they make bank in
I'm like, you're
tourism.
putting yourself in debt for the Olympics.
They make bank in tourism.
Yeah, so $30 million to control the weather.
Do they help out their citizens a lot with that money that they make? No.
We're going to move on. I'm just kidding. But I'm thinking about this.
I mean, that's every country, though.
And of
every
course,
country that hosts the Olympics.
True. Of course, my logical brain is thinking, imagine how much money it would take to control the weather of an entire country, if that was possible.
It depends on the size of the country.
So if it's $30 million to do this area, and conspiracy theorists think that the government is wanting to control the entire, or change the weather in the entire country, or the entire world, that would be astronomically expensive.
What if the country was tiny?
Well, America is not a tiny country.
Right. But if it wasn't America...
If we've been talking about how this is in America. What if it wasn't America?
Yeah.
Anyways. So, of course, following this report, conspiracy theorists adopted the belief that the U.S. government was using mysterious substances that they were releasing into the atmosphere to change the weather. And then the ability of the government in Beijing to modify the weather there was just like, see, they can do it. We can probably do it too. And it kind of confirmed in people's minds. So what do people believe is the method in which these substances are being released into the atmosphere?
Chemtrails.
So, as Ethan said,
but how does it... Anyway,
when you see an airplane flying through the sky, you see those white lines behind it.
Sometimes, not all planes.
Sometimes. So those are called contrails. So it's a shortened...
It's a con.
It's a shortened term for the phrase condensation. Condensation trails. And basically, they're little clouds that are formed by the difference in the engine exhaust and the temperature of the outside atmosphere. So usually the atmosphere is quite cold. The engine exhaust is warm. When it enters into the atmosphere, it creates that kind of condensation line.
Like a cloud.
Like a cloud. And they typically don't last for very long. They kind of will be, you'll see them, and then a couple minutes later, they'll be gone. And how long they last in the sky depends on, weather factors like the humidity or the temperature and all those kinds of things. So chemtrail sounds similar to contrail.
Well, no, it doesn't.
Seriously?
No, it doesn't.
Chemtrail doesn't sound like contrail.
I mean, trail is the same and they both start with C's, but I would say that's where it ends.
Okay. Well, chemtrail is a play on contrail. So conspiracy theorists believe that the contrails are the method of dispersing these substances into the atmosphere. Okay. And this theory has grown into not just saying that they're used for weather manipulation, but instead are used for that along with other purposes, more nefarious purposes, such as sterilization of the population, decreasing the population's life expectancy, and even somehow being able to control people's minds. So, some conspiracy theorists claim that the scariest part is that you can't tell chemtrails and contrails apart. Because
so they do believe some of them are contrails.
Yeah. So they think that contrails exist, but that they're being used to disguise chemtrails.
I see.
Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is you're not supposed to be able to tell them apart. The government has designed it so that they are pretty much indistinguishable and therefore easier to disperse into the population.
Couldn't the government find a way that's like invisible to pump this stuff into the air?
But people think that this is essentially
food or our water.
But people think this is essentially invisible. It's something that's pretty common that you see all the time. And so slight differences that makes it so that if you tell someone, they think you're crazy.
Okay.
That's the whole thing. So we're going to look into some of the things that chemtrail believers think the government is using these for.
Here's my question, though.
Okay.
When did contrails, they always been a thing?
As long as planes have been a thing.
So, when were planes invented?
Well, 1908 is when, I think 1908.
I don't
That's when
remember.
that's when the first car was invented.
Anyway. And do people think that chemtrails started around the time that
1903, the Wright
you were
brothers.
close. Do people think that contrails or that chemtrails began like around 1995, or they think they were already around?
They
They
think they were.
1995.
They think they were probably already around, but they became more widely used.
So, has the population growth gone down at all?
No.
Since 95?
Actually,
so how is it?
The life expectancy has actually risen.
So how is it? How is the two of the claims were that sterilization and life expectancy, and those two are, I believe,
the population has been steadily increasing. The life expectancy has also been steadily increasing. It's the highest it's been.
So there's two of the main things that it does.
Well, we're gonna get.
So clearly, if they are doing it, it's not working.
So one of the theories is that the government is making people sick on purpose. So not just the U.S. population, but the population of the whole world. And I'm going to get into this, but my conspiracy theorist mind is kind of like tickled, and we'll get into a little discussion about that. But there was this website that I used that had a lot of really great information on specifically this theory, and it's going to be in the show notes, of course, but...
What is it? Chemtrailsarereal.org?
Yes. No, all of the websites I used were kind of like skeptics.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a doctor in Arizona named Dr. Michael Pace.
No, there's not.
Yes, there is. And he recently wrote an article stating that he had many patients come to see him for cold and flu-like symptoms like congestion and frequent headaches, as well as other chronic illnesses. So he stated that after he did a bunch of testing on them, he tested hair samples from these patients, which is not something that I have ever seen done in my 5, almost 6 years of working in medicine.
What doctor is like, oh, you're sick? Let me see your hair. Kind of a weird...
The only time I've seen hair sample testing done is for drugs. That's the only time. Anyways. So he tested hair samples, and he said that the results were indicative that the patients were actually having an allergic reaction to high levels of barium in the atmosphere that was being sprayed by the government via chemtrails. So that's his theory, is that these people are sick from barium poisoning, essentially. So the question is there a different explanation for why these patients could have a high level of barium in their hair samples? Well, this article that I read laid out a pretty clear explanation. And so Phoenix, Arizona is where this physician's office is located.
What's his name again?
Dr. Michael Pace, P-E-C-E.
Like the PACER test.
I don't know. I've never taken the PACER test. P-E-C-E.
P-E-C-E?
P-E.
You said P-A the first time.
I said P-E-C-E.
Rewind 10 seconds and tell us if she said P-A-C-E or P-E-C-E.
P-E-C-E. Anyways. So the place where his office is located is an extremely large city and was actually voted as one of the cities in the world with the worst air quality.
Interesting.
So this is because of high levels of pollution that have actually led to a phenomenon called a brown cloud that hangs over the area.
You don't say.
So factories that produce this high level of pollution, such as Phoenix, in places such as Phoenix, also produce high levels of barium into the atmosphere that could possibly then be picked up in a patient's hair sample. So just imagine, I'm walking downtown Arizona, my hair is down. There's smog, the air quality is terrible. There's a brown cloud of pollution and barium hanging out above me. Is it so far-fetched to say that some of the barium from the air gets onto my hair?
Certainly.
If I'm not covering it up or something?
If you're walking around with your hair out, yeah.
If I'm walking around with my hair out, I should expect some barium in my hair.
Yeah.
Anyways.
That's what I always say.
So, also, many of the symptoms that his patients exhibited when they were living, when they came to see him, when they came to see him, are actually similar symptoms to things that people would experience if they're living in poor air quality. So, a small example, in our area, we live in Washington State, And in the summer, there are a lot of wildfires around the area.
It's true.
And the air quality gets really terrible. So basically, the weather services will warn people who have certain conditions, who are elderly, to stay inside and not to go outside as much as possible. And just, some of those symptoms are headaches, fatigue, respiratory issues, trouble breathing, congestion. I know I'm young and I'm relatively healthy, and I experienced a lot of those symptoms just like being outside for short periods of time without a mask on when the air quality was so bad. Yeah. So it's not unlikely in my head to think these people aren't experiencing barium allergy. They're experiencing living in a place with a toxic air environment.
Yeah, pollution poisoning, could you say?
Pollution poisoning, I guess you could say. So that's just like a small example, but it kind of, in my mind, just makes me think, I don't know if that's so much chemtrails as it is pollution.
Yeah.
But he was like convinced these people have barium, the government is spraying barium and chemtrails and making my patients sick. So in 2007, a man from rural Arkansas named Bill Nichols called into his local radio station stating that he collected bowls of rainwater and tested them, stating that what he found was really shocking to him. And he said that there were high levels of barium in these samples, which was unusual to him because he lived in a rural farming community, and that was the only industry. There were no factories, and there were no places to produce barium that would get into the soil or in the water. His hypothesis was that the government was sending barium into the atmosphere via chemtrails. So we're going to break this down. This is from that same website. It will be in the show notes. But the amount that he found may have looked significant to him when he was studying it. However, it was actually below what is considered to be normal or safe amounts of barium in our atmosphere. So the EPA will set, safe limits for a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And what he found was still below the safe limit. And you might think, I don't want there to be any. Well, that's what they consider to be relatively safe.
Well, I want there to be some.
Some barium.
Yeah, I'd prefer a little bit of barium.
A healthy dose of barium, if you will. So what he found was actually below what was considered normal.
Yeah, but the EPA's in on it.
Yeah, they are.
Can't you see? Use your third eye.
Okay, but I'm going to break it down some more.
Break it down.
Certain parts of the world have higher levels of barium in their soil than other parts of the world just naturally. And Arkansas actually has one of the highest amounts of a substance called barite, which is what barium comes from. So Arkansas has a high level of this substance called barite, which is kind of, I guess, the building block of barium, or the beginning of barium.
You're saying a lot of bees right now.
A lot of bees. So it makes sense that he would be like, he lives in a rural farming community. I'm assuming there's a lot of soil around.
Right.
There's a lot of barite in the soil.
Right.
So he probably, I wouldn't, if I saw a high level of barium, I'd probably freak out too. Because I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, it's fair.
Those are two instances of people who believe that the government was using barium to make people sick. So the question that I'm wrestling with is, why would the government want to make people sick? I think my brain is kind of going in the direction of sick people are scared people. So I'm sure we've seen this with the COVID pandemic. People who are sick or who see sickness become very frightened, which makes sense. And the idea is that people who are scared are more likely to follow what the government says. And are more likely, so if the government says, do this and it'll make you better, take this drug, it'll make you better, pay this money, it'll make you better, people are scared because they're sick, and the idea is that they're going to comply more. And that kind of goes along with the line of the government wants an obedient population. I'm kind of seeing where my brain is going with this.
A little.
Yeah?
I don't buy it.
So another suggestion is that the government wants to create illnesses that then can be treated with big pharma, and they'll be able to exploit people by selling them drugs to treat these illnesses the government created, making money because, as we know, pharmacology is a very lucrative field.
Right.
And therefore deepening the pockets of corrupt politicians who are in bed with big pharma. So I work in healthcare. We do have a population that has a plethora of chronic diseases that require expensive medications and expensive treatments. And sometimes it's difficult for people to afford it. But my question then is, do people think that chemtrails are responsible for these chronic illnesses like heart disease, diabetes, these kinds of things that I would say are pretty more common, or just acute illnesses like flu-like symptoms? Because you can't, I mean, unless like they're making money from like Sudafed, I mean, you're going to make more money creating chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
That people have to take a pill for every month.
It's true.
Or they have to pick it up every month, take it every day. So that's kind of where my brain went.
Yeah. I suppose I can see why your brain went there.
So do you think that, I think that's kind of like where people are going with this.
Maybe.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So Susanna Mayer is a woman who runs a group dedicated to exposing the truth of chemtrails. This group is called Bye Bye Blue Sky. And she states that 20 to 30 years ago, you just didn't see these chemtrails in the sky the same way you do now.
Probably because there were less planes.
Yes. I was going to say, contrails were definitely still a thing.
Yeah, I feel like there's just more flying.
Yeah. There's an increase in air traffic, which could account for the increase in sightings. Also, there are photographs from World War II that show contrails.
So that was well before 1995.
Susanna, girl. Susanna, girl.
We're disappointed.
I'm not disappointed.
I am.
Okay. I don't know her. I can't be disappointed.
I can not know her and still be disappointed. And I am.
Anyways.
Susanna.
So we're moving on to the next theory. Okay. Next theory. That the chemtrails are being used to slowly control and change people's minds and make them easier to manipulate by the government.
Oh, so that's what I said.
That's what you said.
Let's go.
It makes sense. I mean, not that it makes sense that, like, in the sense that I'm like, oh, yes, there's...
It makes sense that that's a theory?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Do I trust the government?
Yes.
No.
Oh.
No.
Darn.
Do I think that the government wants to be able to control people's minds?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Just, do I think that they're, like, technologically there?
I think the government would like to be able to control each other's minds.
Yeah. The government's all lizard people, though, so they have the reptilian
brains.
brains.
It must be two different factions of lizard people, the amount they fight.
Yeah.
Tell you what.
Yeah, there's two different factions of lizards.
I believe it.
I believe it. Yeah. So that's a big one, is that it's mind control. Plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like people are conspiracy theorists or government skeptics often think that, or are trying to come up with reasons that how like the government is controlling people's minds. I wouldn't say that it's working if it is.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
They're playing the long game.
I guess.
If that's the case.
I guess.
So, next theory, population control or sterilization.
We already debunked this.
Okay, so...
the population's not going down.
So the idea here is that chemtrails are either used to make people infertile, or to alter their sex drive, or to, I guess, kind of subtly nudge them away from wanting to have children, in order to control the size of the population. So some people also believe that the chemicals are being used to make people sick, with the goal of kind of eliminating members of the population who are less valuable to the government or who are more vulnerable, such as the elderly.
That's like this is the Darwin theory.
Mm-hmm. So, but it's purposeful, such as like the elderly population or people with certain illnesses, people with disabilities, basically people who are not really...
Yeah, that's what I said. Darwin. Isn't Darwin the one who's like survival of the fittest?
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest, except it's like, we will spray you with chemicals.
And if you're weak, you die.
And if you're weak, you die.
But you know what? They don't need to spray chemicals for people who have weaker immune systems to die earlier. That's just natural. That's how it works. So why does the government need to speed that along?
Yeah.
And it's obviously not working because more people are surviving. And the thing is that the more you like produce or expose people to certain things, like eventually the body mutates to be able to handle that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's how genetic mutation works.
It's okay. So it reminds me of this book that I read. It's called The Cruel Prince series by Holly Black. So it's a fictional book. But one of the main character in the book, I don't remember what the practice is called, but she would slowly like expose herself to poisons.
Yeah.
In order so that like it has a name. I can't remember what it is, but she would like every day give herself a dose of poison and slowly increase the dose.
Right.
Until over time she was immune.
Yeah. They did that Prince what's his face did that in The Princess Bride also.
Wesley.
Yeah. That's just how he defeated the guy. I forget his name. The other guy.
I don't remember his name either.
Inconceivable.
Him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what it's called, but it's a thing. And so, I mean, people do develop immunities.
Yeah.
But some people won't. And I think that's the idea, that some people won't, and the government wants people to die.
Yeah, well, they're going to die anyway. That's how being human works. I just am like...
We are all marching slowly towards
I'm not going to buy it because the population isn't decreasing. Like, it's increasing still. So, sterility, obviously, that's not working. It's either not working or it's not happening. And then...
Or more people are having more kids.
And the life expectancy is...
high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, it doesn't... If that's what the government's trying to do, it's not working or it's not happening.
Right. Yeah.
So, I'm just like... My mind is going to go to, it's not happening.
So, that brings me to another point. The British government actually admitted to spraying their population with pathogens in the past. And so this is kind of what gets some people thinking it's happening. So this happened for decades. So these experiments were conducted from 1940 to 1979. And the government actually released the documents on these biological warfare experiments that were conducted on their population.
For shame.
So the purpose of these experiments were supposedly to test their population's susceptibility to certain pathogens in case the Russians decided to attack them with biological warfare methods.
Yeah, that's totally normal.
So the government insists that none of the pathogens that were sprayed into the atmosphere were actually dangerous to most of the population. Most of the population. With the exception of elderly people and people with respiratory issues.
What's going on, Queenie?
So, in short, still dangerous, just not dangerous to most people. I love how they say they're mostly dangerous. Like, they're mostly safe.
Mostly fine.
It's like, if people are at risk, then it's not safe.
Right.
Right. Like, it's safe unless
it's like saying, it's fine. You'll survive if you drive without a seatbelt, as long as you don't get hit.
As long as you don't get hit by a car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, a number of people have come forward after the documents were released, stating that their children had birth defects that they claim were the result of these experiments, and that people were just getting sick from them. So, apparently the government had physicians investigate these claims.
What are we doing over there, Brits?
And they concluded that the tests conducted were generally safe.
Again, generally.
The key word. And that they were...
1 out of 10 is still 1.
And they were performed with the public's health in mind. In the event of a biological attack.
But they were meaning right.
Mm-hmm.
They meant right. They weren't trying to poison people. They just did.
Yeah.
But they meant right.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see people are like, the British government did it.
Yeah, but those Brits are weird over there. Unless you're from England and you're listening, we love you. But your government's kind of weird.
I would
USA. Just kidding. Our government's weird too.
No, I don't think that it's an issue with our listeners in Britain, unless our listeners are the Queen of England.
Hey, if she listens.
Queen Elizabeth, if you're listening.
She listens.
Are you a lizard? Are you?
Come on the show.
Tell us if you're a lizard.
Show us your eyes.
Yeah.
I want to see them in person.
Yeah. So that's kind of sketchy. And it gets people kind of, you know what I mean? Okay.
Why doesn't the people trust the government? Government does something like this.
It's mostly safe.
That's why.
That's why. That's why. Also, we know in America, MK Ultra happened. That's a thing.
It's true.
So we know that the government has performed these kinds of experiments and then revealed later that they happened.
That's just a little quirky.
It's
not a big deal. Come on, keep trusting us.
No. Moving on to geoengineering.
What is that?
We're just gonna Geo, like GEO, like geography.
Yeah.
Engineering.
Okay.
Okay.
I know what those two words mean separately.
So it's a phenomenon people believe is the purpose behind chemtrails, which is a purposeful change in the Earth's natural climate and weather patterns.
So it's just going back to weather change.
To counteract climate change.
Well, it ain't working.
So, weather modification. So, this is something that has some scientific basis behind it. However, most of the scientific work that has been done hasn't been able to be tested.
See, I feel like I'd be okay with this.
In the population, but just on a computer.
I feel like I'd be okay with this.
I would need to know more about it.
I mean, as long as obviously it was mostly safe
Generally
for the
safe.
human population. But if it was like safe for us, and they could actually...
What do you mean by safe? Do you mean safe, or do you mean government safe?
I mean safe. If it was actually safe, and it did have an effect on climate change...
A positive effect on the environment.
No, a negative effect.
If it had a negative effect on the environment.
I want more global warming. No. If it did what they say it's gonna do, like, I would be fine with that. Yeah. I don't trust our government. First off.
Period.
What? I said first off. You said period. Doesn't period mean the thought is over? I thought you meant
like first off, like...
No, first off as in first thought coming to my head.
Oh, okay. Carry on.
I don't know if people know this, at least the U.S. government is mostly like bureaucrats.
And lizards.
Well, yes.
Bureaucratic lizards.
Lizards goes without saying.
Mm-hmm.
Bureaucrats doesn't. They're bureaucrats who mostly care about getting themselves reelected.
Money.
And making money. Most of them, even if they say they care about the environment, they might, but it's under those two things.
Yeah.
It goes reelection,
money,
and then maybe, there might be something else here, but it could be environment. But at the most, it's probably the third thing they care about.
Popularity at this point.
Yeah. So my thing is, they're not going to be like super into doing something that spends a lot of money.
No, I mean, it costs $30 million the Olympic Stadium in Beijing.
I mean, the amount of money that goes to a bunch of random stuff that hurts the environment, I mean... Yeah.
Anyways.
And then they say, hey, do your part, small humans who actually can't...
I see you with a disposable water bottle? Right to jail.
Are you using a plastic grocery bag?
Right to jail.
You're killing the environment.
Are you stealing? Right
now,
to jail.
Let me go back to my factory that's pumping toxic fumes into the air.
Remember that TikTok's
yes.
Like, are you stealing?
Well, it's from Parks and Rec.
Oh, Parks and Rec?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anyways.
You're stealing? Right to jail.
So one method that has been tested is where small reflective particles are sent out via an injection into the air with the goal...
You really inject something into...
Yeah, I don't really know. With the goal... Space. So here's the thing. So the goal is to reduce the amount of sunlight that reaches the Earth by reflecting back away from the Earth with those little reflective particles, therefore cooling the planet down.
So we're trying to increase our ozone layer or something? Because isn't the ozone layer the thing that protects us from the sun?
I think so.
Which is why we don't get baked?
We're trying to If you're watching on YouTube, I just described it. It's just, here's the little things, the little particles in my hand. The sun comes down. Oh,
Boing.
bounces off.
Boing.
Boing. Reflects back up.
But we don't want to go too far.
Science.
So then we get no sun. We'll all be pasty and die.
That was a personal attack, wasn't it?
How is that a personal attack?
I'm pasty.
Well, that was a joke, but then I was like, also, we would die if we didn't have the sun.
Oh, okay.
I think. Probably.
So,
everything else would die.
Moving along. At this point, scientists aren't able to perform weather modification on a large scale.
So that we know
of, and have only been able to do small local things. So, some people believe that there was a drought in California between the years 2008 and 2011.
Isn't there still a drought? I feel like there's been a drought.
I feel like,
constantly.
California is just like a state of drought. So people think that was the result of chemtrails affecting the weather and causing it to not rain or be drier during that period of time.
Or they're just closer to the equator.
Or that. Or chemtrails.
Could be.
Or chemtrails.
Could just be the geological placement of California.
Could be. Or it could be chemtrails. Maybe it's Maybelline. Maybe it's chemtrails. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. You know that commercial? Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, I got it.
Okay. So, I guess the question is there any evidence to suggest that they...
No!
Okay. Well...
Of course there isn't.
You didn't even let me finish.
Go ahead.
I said, is there any evidence to suggest that chemtrails exist?
No. Oh, no. No.
Simply put, not really, is what I wrote.
No.
So
even more simply put, no.
So the main bit of evidence that is used is that chemtrails look different than regular contrails. So
how can you tell they're so far away?
So people say that chemtrails form patterns or grids in the sky that contrails can't. However, this is not true. So especially near airports, contrails can totally stack on top of each other. And it's not
stacks on stacks on stacks of contrails.
Stacks on stacks on stacks, okay? So contrails can stack on each other and create patterns just depending on whichever way the airplanes are flying. And it's not like impossible. And it's not like, ooh, I saw like, it's like maybe one plane went over and the humidity in the area was such that it stayed in the air for a couple hours. And then another plane flew over because they always do. And that one stayed too. It's just like, it can happen.
Yeah. That's how air works.
Yeah. So along with that, people say that chemtrails last longer than contrails. Because they say contrails disappear after a few minutes, but chemtrails last for hours. And like I said, that's not the case. The length of time that contrails stay in the sky depends on a lot of different factors, like temperature and humidity.
And wind.
And if these criteria meet a certain condition, then they can last in the atmosphere for hours.
So it's sounding to me
the technology...
This is a bunch of baloney.
We're getting there. So the technology that airplanes use is constantly changing. So it could also just be that the engines for jets or airplanes are different. So they make the contrails last longer, they make them last shorter. It just really could be anything. So another bit of evidence against. So if these chemicals are being sprayed at the altitude that's suspected, it's highly likely that atmospheric factors such as the wind or just like changes in altitude would essentially render these chemicals useless or destroy them by the time they reached the ground to affect the population.
So maybe that's why it's not working.
So planes fly at like 40,000 feet.
Yeah.
So imagine barium just coming down from 40,000 feet. You really think it's going to make it all the way to the bottom? No. So, I mean, it'd be pretty strong barium. It'd be a strong barium to make it, down there. I don't know.
Cool.
So, of course, the government has come forward with a response stating, quote, the chemtrail hoax has been investigated and refuted by many established and accredited universities, scientific organizations, and major media publications. The EPA has also come forward with a similar message. The problem is, same question we ask nearly every episode. Do you really think that people are going to believe what the government says?
Heck no.
Oh, the government said they don't exist? They don't exist. You're right. Like, do we think that's going to happen? No.
Huh.
So, in response to this distrust, a group of 77 scientists got together and studied soil and water samples provided by chemtrail believers. 76 of the 77 stated that there was nothing concerning in the samples, totally normal. And the one scientist who wasn't on board with them stated that one of the samples provided did show higher than normal levels of barium, but that he could not explain what the cause for that was, as the area this was found in was an area that typically had low soil barium concentrations. But despite this, a 2017 Harvard study revealed about 10% of the population polled believed 100% chemtrails are real.
Interesting.
While 20 to 30% believed that there was some truth to the theory, but they weren't like diehard believers. So, a question that's been in my mind is a logistical question. Do the pilots who are flying the planes that are dispersing the chemicals know that they're spraying these chemicals? Or is it just something that every plane does? Like, if we're flying to Hawaii, is it spraying chemtrails? Is it just some planes that spray chemtrails? How do they determine what planes spray chemtrails?
It's a big conspiracy.
These are the questions that I have.
And another reason why this theory makes zero sense.
Maybe it's not like a hugely important question, but it's one that I was thinking about. I was like, do they know if they're spraying chemtrails? Are they in on it? Is every pilot in on it? Pilots, if you're listening, are you in on this? Let us know. As we conclude, Ethan?
Yeah?
What are your thoughts?
Bad.
Can you use some more
Bad.
descriptive words?
It's a theory that makes no sense and has no evidence. So I do not believe at all. And I think that if someone does believe this, you're wrong.
Ethan? I would like to hear their reasoning if they do believe it.
Sure. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Do I believe in chemtrails? No. Do I understand people having a high level of distrust with the government?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not
100%.
I'm not saying I think that people need to trust the government, or if they don't trust the government, they're wrong. I'm saying the chemtrails thing makes no sense. Because even if the government is doing what they say, what the theory says they're doing, it's not working.
I would like to know, if someone does believe in chemtrails, I'd really be curious why.
Yeah. I would be too.
Yeah, I'm super interested in that kind of thing. As always, let us know what you guys think. This is a really interesting topic, and it kind of goes into a lot of different directions. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, and like we said at the beginning, the comment section on YouTube is a great place to respectfully and kindly share your opinions on these theories. So let us know what you guys think. If you like us, give us a 5-star review on your streaming platform of choice.
I don't think it matters if they like us.
Just give us a 5-star review. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel, and you turn on the post notification, and you stay tuned, because we will be back in 2 weeks with another very exciting episode.
Probably.
Definitely.
We'll see.
Bye.
Bye.